Welcome to Say More, the Powerhouse podcast dedicated to elevating the voices and journeys of women striving for the C-suite and those who've already conquered it. Brace yourself for candid conversations, illuminating interviews, and unfiltered insights as we delve into the triumphs, hurdles, and invaluable lessons learned along the path to success. Join us on this empowering journey where inspiration meets empowerment and wisdom reigns supreme. Get ready to ignite your ambition, harness your potential, and thrive alongside your sisters on Say More. Welcome to another episode of the Say More podcast. We are so glad that you decided to join us. You know, it's such a great destination for talking about not only some of the challenges that we face, but also the triumphs that we face in the space of women as we aspire to not only make it to the C-suite, or perhaps it's not your journey that you want to make it to the C-suite, but you want to seek promotion. This is the destination and place for you to do it. And I think the great thing about our speakers that we've had thus far is that though we talk about women, we realize that there's a role that men have played in this conversations as well. I mentioned before that some of my greatest mentors have been men, and at the same time, those are some of the best people that we've also had some interaction with when it comes to them being developed to want to know more about being an all-inclusive leader. So I am so excited to go down this conversation and path with a good dear friend of mine, Rose Marie Sloan. We'll call her Rose throughout because that's what friends do. But today, we're going to learn something that I didn't even know as well. And so we get to share it together or learn about it together. And that is, Rose, could you talk to us about not only your journey? Now that I knew, but I didn't know about the founding of JBR Leadership Consulting and really kind of what inspired you to focus on supporting leaders. And of course, we'll talk about women as our key area of focus, but realizing it really is broad and it runs the gamut of men and women.
Well, Kimberly, it's so good to be you. It's good to see you again. It's good to be here today. And it's really good to talk about the journey that women have to senior leadership positions. And that's really what inspired me. I think about myself back being 6, 7, 8 years old, wanting to lead my own classroom. And I would bring neighborhood kids together in the summertime, and I probably wasn't very popular on the block and wanted to teach them. And so I had papers and I just I've always wanted to lead. So it became really important to me at a very, very young age. I began my career, as you know, as an elementary school teacher, spent almost 20 years as the leader of the classroom, and hopefully influential in the lives of what I call, the little people, because they were going to grow up and be big people. The other thing that I think about is the role of the executive officer also for an organization that I lead. I'm the first woman to be in that senior leadership chair. I don't take that lightly. It's not something that I brag about or boast, but it is something internally that really fills me with a great sense of accomplishment and joy. And then it becomes my responsibility to honor the vision and the history of the organization and then take it forward. JBR stemmed from all of my experiences. And actually, JBR was coined by my husband. I was getting in the car one day, very, very challenged with something and feeling like I couldn't be vulnerable in the situation that I was going in. And I was getting in the car and he handed me my lunch, gave me a kiss on the cheek, and he said, JBR. And I went, JBR? I'm going to be thinking about this. And he said, just be Rose. It's all you need to be. Just be Rose, and everything else will take care of itself. And so I began thinking, if I ever was to lead my own consulting organization, that's what I would do. It would be about being authentic, showing up and be real. So whether you think about JBR consulting, leadership consulting as being just be Rose, what it really means is just be real.
I Love that. And I am so glad that I did not twist your arm and ask you to share it in advance because I really wanted, me and the listeners to learn about what the meaning was behind it together. And it is more powerful than I ever thought it was or would be. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And we certainly have to add your husband to our group of influencers because it really is about investing in others. So, Rose, when we think about, JBR leadership and being the founder, what specific challenges or gaps did you identify in the landscape, specifically around women's leadership development that motivated you to take action or inspired you to take action?
I think it's really clear the future is female. It's very clear. There's so many roles. There's so many women moving into leadership positions. The future really is just out there for us. Research shows that women, when they are a part of either a senior leadership board or a senior leadership team, that those organizations are more productive, more forward moving, and we bring a great deal of perspective. The other thing that I would say is that women have had to really overcome a lot of deep rooted stereotypes, microaggressions. There is still persisting bias and discrimination in the work environment, compensation inequities. There's a lot of challenges that women do experience, but women are tough. We're strong. We're committed. We are just as committed and just as passionate about being in a leadership position, but also being promoted. We're ambitious. And we bring a lot of what I like to call the soft skills. We excel at those soft skills. Now, of course, there's the hard skills, those skills that are job essential,
Yeah.
related structures, the strategies, the systems. Women excel in soft skills, and it's the soft skills that are going to retain talent in our organizations. High emotional intelligence, flexibility, teamwork, adaptability, communication skills, all of those things that honor the talent and the style of not just women in an organization, but all people, all leaders in an organization. And so this is really what motivated me to be part of this process, to help lead this process, and to
Yeah.
inspire women.
Oh my goodness. I hear, and I bet you our listeners are like, let me get closer. So if you're walking, doing your afternoon stroll and you got your smartphone in your hand, I know you're pulling it close. And if you're watching us on YouTube or Spotify, Apple, wherever you're doing that at, I know again, this is such a good conversation that I know that you will want to replay it because it really does touch all aspects and share it with your friends that may be men as well because it's a big enough conversation that we need all hands on deck. And so, Rose, when you think about critical issues, what do you believe are the most critical issues or obstacles faced by women, advancing to leadership positions, and how does JBR leadership address those challenges?
I mentioned a lot of the challenges and what I just said, but I would add to that allyship. Women supporting women, providing opportunities to mentor or to coach, be part of another woman's journey. I think that's really powerful. And I really do believe that men do this very, very well. They have connections, they have more networks that support their growth and development, that champion the path they're on, the process they're on. Women, I don't believe, do this as well. And we need to support other women. I can't tell you how many times that I felt like a woman was not on my side.
Right.
I don't want any woman, regardless of role, to feel any threat, anything. I want to empower. And so that I think is really important. And I know when I said that about 32% of all senior leadership positions involve a woman in that role, and that needs to be much, much higher. I do believe that there is a lot of training out there available, but what I think is happening is that women in leadership positions are stalling. And I don't know the reason for that, but I have seen the research there. Women supporting other women. If you have the opportunity, you're in a leadership role as a woman, mentor someone. Find someone who has that potential to take that next step, provide coaching opportunities for them, sponsor them, put them in a program or help them find a program that's going to support what their path is. I think that's really important.
Rose, you have said so many. I mean, again, not only this conversation, I have to share with the listeners too. You were also one of our great speakers and conversationalists on Workforce Insight. So if you haven't tuned into that episode, then make sure that you're looking for that one as well, because lots of great nuggets. So you mentioned that oftentimes in the case of women, as they're making their way up, the allyship and the sponsorship, I tend to absolutely agree. And I've often wondered, and it's not just a conversation that's in Kim's head. It's that literally where every corner of the U.S. where I've gone, you hear this conversation that I don't feel that I was supported. And I'll say, okay, who was it? It was another woman. So and what advice have you given to those who are in leadership roles? Because sometimes, and I heard this just, a week ago, a colleague said to me in a different space, and she said, you know what? I just opted. It was such a bad experience for me. And because it was with another woman, I chose not to pursue leadership anymore. I said, really? She's like, yeah, I just couldn't take it anymore. And I said, well, what'd you do? She said, I left that job and I went into another. And I hate those stories because we have such a unique opportunity to help each other and to learn from the experiences shared by others. Hence the reason for why even my interest would say more, regardless of whether I'm resilient and whatever else people think about me. I knew it was bigger than me. And I knew that having a platform that we could have all these collective voices, that it would just be something amazing, and that, maybe we would be okay with hearing it in this way and less, not a situation where it was threatening, but really about allyship and friendship. So thinking about that, what ways have you done, or I guess processes, workshops, whatever the case may be, with JBR leadership to try and combat that, because it's a real thing that's ever present?
I think the biggest thing that I do with JBR leadership is coaching.
Yeah.
Coaching, there's a difference between mentoring and there's a difference between mentoring and coaching. Mentoring is about linking yourself with another professional, and I mentor as well, but linking yourself with another professional that you aspire to be, or that will give you support or guidance or some training. That's what mentoring is about. It becomes all about the person that you're mentoring, not about the mentor themselves. Coaching is much different, and this is what I do a lot of. It's about performance. So I hear the stories that you just mentioned, Kimberly.
Yeah.
That's heartbreaking to hear a story like that. I also understand a story like that. I've been in that woman's shoes. I've wanted to walk away. I have walked away. I don't do that anymore. And I don't encourage women. I don't encourage any leader to do that. Women are stronger. We are stronger than we think we are. It's been very challenging for us because we have been a part, like I say, of some of these deep-rooted stereotypes, or the lack of positions that are available for women, or the lack of people hiring women in these senior leadership positions. I will tell you that when I applied for a position, and this was years ago in district leadership, I was in the process of getting my administrative certificate.
Uh-huh.
A year earlier, a male colleague of mine and a good friend was also in the process, but he was hired as an administrator while he was completing his certificate. I thought, great, this is an opportunity for me.
Yeah.
I applied. I was told that I could not go further in the process because my administrative certificate hadn't been completed.
Oh my goodness.
So you see right there, double standard. Now I'm not preaching that this happens all the time.
Right.
That was an experience that I had. I hear about these experiences from other women. My advice when I am coaching is, let's deal with the issue. Let's share the issue. Let's create awareness around it. Let's develop a plan. Let's learn how to communicate effectively, intentionally. but let's really get clear on what it is we want and then how we're going to go about achieving that. And we will stumble. I mean, all leaders stumble, and we will stumble along the way, and that's not gender specific. That's just,
Right.
but I think getting involved in a formal coaching process is life changing. And I've heard that on numerous testimonials of people that have worked with me. So if you want to work with me, I have parameters. I will tell you this. I don't fix people because I
Exactly.
don't believe you need to be fixed. I believe this is the mission of JBR that goes right to
Yeah.
what you're talking about. Developing people in the context of who they are, what they believe, and how they define success. That's the vision of JBR. And the way we do that is leading with integrity, intent, with intention, with influence. So we don't have control over some of those issues, especially the one that I just described in terms of my experience. So what can I influence?
Right.
That's where we go. Coaching with me, you get involved in at least 6 months, twice a week, and then the rest of the year we work on where we're headed about monthly. So that would be my recommendation.
I love that, and definitely making sure that as individuals are listening in, that they understand the difference between whether it's coaching, whether it's mentorship, whether it's sponsorship and sponsors, because that understanding those terms. So really, what I'm trying to do with each of these conversations on Say More is to create that I call it the playbook, or that at a glance, that you know what these terms are and you know what they mean to you and how you can pursue them. So, Rose, when we think about, everything that we've talked about thus far, in what ways does JBR Leadership differentiate itself from organizations or initiatives focused on women's leadership development? What do you think that differentiating piece is?
Well, I mentioned the coaching piece
Yeah.
and training specific
Hmm.
to the needs that want to be developed, whatever you want to be developed. But I'm a strengths-based coach.
Yeah.
And I believe strongly in transformational leadership. So how are we influencing, allowing people to motivate themselves, stimulating with conversation, continuing our education? I'm on a journey.
Yeah.
I've been on a journey since the day I was born. I'm on a journey, and my journey takes different paths. All people are on a journey. So I really think JBR differentiates itself because it's from a strengths-based philosophy around transformational leadership that incorporates both training, coaching, and self-selecting of a mentor all at the same time. So you can't do one without the other.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, you actually need that 1-2 punch. So when you think about, and basically too, from your own experiences, what are some of the key competencies and skills that aspiring leaders, especially women, should focus on developing to succeed in higher ed or just leadership in general?
Well, I would say one of them is networking.
Yeah.
Really find places, like this podcast. Listen to other women, listen to stories, and connect with them. The strongest thing that we have in terms of women working with other women or women working together is the experiences that we share. Many of us may have 2 jobs.
Yeah.
Some of us have families. Some of us have aging parents that we're working with. We have different defining moments, whether they're positive or negative, that have shaped the reasons we believe the way we believe or the path that we're on. Connect with other women. You won't feel alone.
Yeah.
I recently joined a book club. I wanted something different that I hadn't experienced, and I wanted to have intellectual conversations with other women around stories that we were reading and finding connections to. So this is what I did. I went on Google and I live in Phoenix, so I Googled Phoenix Book Club, and one popped up, and I submitted my request to join, and I attended. I didn't know any of the women. There were 9 other women there. I knew none. And when I left, I knew 9 women that were powerful forces in the fields that they were leading, and some weren't leading except leading in their own lives at home. They weren't leading out in the workforce, but raising children
Yeah.
being a family member, all of that are experiences that women have very, very closely. And so I would just encourage networking. I would also encourage women to always show up as themselves.
Yes.
Don't try to be somebody else. Be yourself. Hence JBR.
Yeah.
So or JBK, just be Kimberly. Whoever your first initial is, just be yourself. And I think wellness is really important.
Yes.
Women, take care of yourselves. I mean, first and foremost, take care of yourselves. You're no good to anyone if you don't take care of yourself. So, if you think I don't have time to do that, why? Ask yourself, why don't I have time? You're the most important person in your life.
Yeah.
You really are. It's okay to say that. I am the most important person in my life. So those are some, I mean, simple, but you can see they're human competencies. Now, in the work environment, women have high emotional intelligence. That's a key
Yeah.
competency. We're flexible. We work in all kinds of situations. We have to deal with all kinds of situations, right? Now, I'm not saying that men don't.
All right.
I'm speaking specifically to women. Be authentic.
Yeah. So again, so many rich nuggets there. And when I think about, the networking, that's the one that I hear most often is, there is a comfort level in being comfortable with the people that you already know and the situations that you believe you already know the outcome, because in their minds, like, no one wants rejection. And what I try and preach, much like you, is, what you've got to stretch yourself. Go in and be intentional. You walk into a room, realize that you are the best version of yourself and take that person in there. You will meet people by being you. You will. And so really the world does become your oyster, which is why, again, would say more. The notion was that every corner of these United States I wanted to touch. And then I thought about my dear friend over there, Rose in Arizona. And I'm like, you know what? We can bring these connections because there's so many rich stories, much like a quilt. That's what we're making. That's what we're making with these conversations. So thank you for that. And I know that there will be listeners that want to know more about not only JBR, but the JB question mark and whatever their name is that they can feel that with. So I love it.
You're right.
So,
And you mentioned something, Kimberly, about taking a risk.
yeah,
You may, and there's a good chance you may
yeah,
stumble and fall. We learn so much from the things that don't go the way that we want, just as we do from the things that go the way that we want them to go. Take a risk.
take
We're
a risk.
stronger than we think we are. Take a
Bet on
risk.
yourself. Bet on yourself, and I promise you'll come out
Absolutely.
stronger than ever before.
Correct.
So
Absolutely.
how does JBR leadership, cultivate a supportive community? Because we've
Yeah.
talked about the network, and even when you just joined the book club, just you mentioned as well. So this supportive community of leaders to collaborate and share insights, what does that look like for those that take part with JBR leadership?
It really creates a collaborative space. I say this all the time. I'm a lifelong learner. In my top 5 themes of talent through Clifton Strengths, one of them is learner, and it couldn't define me in a better way. I also have a lot of positivity, and it's not a positivity that's not realistic, but it's a positivity of a can-do attitude. And so when you come together in a collaborative space and you start to break down some of those walls that we have
Right.
put up, and we start to talk about those things that are very important to us and the experiences we have, this is what we find. We find we have more in common than not. And we find that we can be supportive and we can be that validating voice that we don't hear. The self talk that we tell ourselves is so destructive. And believe me, I'm a great storyteller. I can go from A to B in my mind and just boom, like that. And there are times I have to be so aware that I'm doing that. And it makes
Right.
me wonder, if I'm doing it internally, am I saying that out loud too? Am I thinking and believing that way? And when I hear other women validating me or saying things like, that conversation really helped me to reflect. I'm so glad you mentioned that. You said it out loud. You provided an opportunity for me to connect with it and feel safe.
Yeah.
Psychological safety is something that's so important to me and the work that I do, creating spaces. Kimberly, think about it. When you go into your work environment,
Yeah.
think about all the ways, whether you're home or at work, that we keep ourselves physically safe. We have alarms in our homes, in our work environments. We have keys. We have locks. When we go to work, sometimes there's metal detectors that we have to walk
Yeah.
through. All these ways that we keep ourselves physically safe. What do we do for psychological safety? Together as friends, together in families, together in collaborative training programs or coaching programs. It's about trust and safety. And if we do that, we will create a space where people feel like they belong, they feel like they can be vulnerable, and they can really, JB, real.
I love that. And you talked about, the idea of, not only being safe and the validation that can come from it, but will you also speak to the converse of that? Because that, again, has been a lot of the conversations that I've heard from other women, that it hurts more when it's inflicted by other women because you expect them to understand the struggle, right? And so when, much like you, where it was okay to not have a certificate until you didn't have the certificate, right? Or in some instances, and I heard this consistently too throughout these conversations that I've had, and is that, okay, well, I can't afford to be super confident or strong, come across as strong in my space because I'll be perceived wrong. But if someone else does it, then it's good and it's amazing, and they're on a fast track for leadership.
Right.
So, would you talk just a moment about that?
You're right. There are so many different standards that are out there, and the way women are perceived in terms of authority, or if there are some behaviors that are more acceptable depending on gender.
Right.
There are labels. Like I said, it's very deep rooted. It's
Yeah.
something that women in leadership roles are mindful of, and that, you know, I guess they don't have to be gender specific, but we tend to
Right.
see it that way. Um, and it's really hard when you feel defeated to get back up. And this is why working with somebody, to have
Yeah.
somebody to talk to that's not on the inside, that can hold your confidentialities, and you can really express what's going on. Because what ends up happening is you begin talking about it, and someone
Right.
else is really actively listening, and they can help either reframe or provide a way forward. But the first thing that I do is I validate it.
Yeah.
That sounds really frustrating. That sounds really hard. That sounds challenging. How did you ever pick yourself back up and decide that you're going to go forward?
Oh my
Um,
gosh. Yeah.
so really validating, as opposed to saying things like, it's not that bad. Oh, that just happens. Oh, that just happens in our work environment all the time. Oh, that's just how it is. Why? Why
Yeah.
is it that way? No, that's
Yeah.
not how it's supposed.
It's not acceptable, right?
Not acceptable. Absolutely. So we need to learn to stand firm.
Right.
And that's really hard. I know what I'm saying. People may be out there saying, Rose, I've done that. Rose, I've tried. And believe me, I'm with you. I've
Yeah.
tried too. There are times I felt defeated that I don't want to do this anymore. It's
Right.
easier to leave than it is to stay. But what are we doing when we leave?
Yeah.
It's our job to connect. That's why I keep saying network, connect, find a program, find someone who you can have confidential conversations with so you don't feel alone. Someone who will validate the fact that this is hard, it's frustrating, it's wrong, and that we're going to find a way through.
Yeah.
Monty Williams used to be, I'm a big sports person. Monty
Yeah.
Williams of the Suns. He's no longer with us, but he's just beloved in
Oh,
this area. And he used to say, everything you want's on the other side of hard.
oh, I love it.
I encourage you to think about that. Everything you want is on the other side of hard. I can't tell you how many times I have had to say that to myself. So the only way to get from A to B is to go through. Now, there's going to be
That's
a
it.
lot of avenues, but we have to go through it and
We
figure out our way.
have to go through it. And for the listeners, a reminder, a stark reminder that it's not about this whole linear space that we're going to walk down. It is not a straight line. So,
No.
and it's okay. And it's okay to stop and start, take a breath, but do not call it a permanent stop. Call it a pause. That's what we'll do. We'll refer to it on Say More as a comma. We'll put commas, but we're certainly not putting periods. We are resilient.
You know,
Rose,
can I add to
what?
that?
Sure.
You asked about one of the competencies or one of the ingredients, I think, when we're in communications or things that are happening. And you made a
Yeah.
really great point, that comma. I say all the time, pause is your friend.
Yes.
Pause allows you to take a deep breath. It doesn't have to be a long pause. Take a
Yeah.
deep breath. Don't be reactive. Take a deep breath, figure out what you want to say, and say it that way so you can articulate it and it can come out the way that when you walk away, you feel like I said what I wanted to say and it came out the way I wanted to say it, whether it's firm
Exactly.
or pleasant or critical. Say it the way you want to say it so it comes out that way. And I always say, when you're in somebody's presence, people need to walk away with their dignity intact.
Yeah.
They do. Dignity is huge. And you need to be able to walk away with your dignity intact. I have stopped conversations after a pause and said, whoa, this is
Yeah.
going in a direction that's not going to end well. I think both of us need to be taking a pause right now and coming back when we can have a very productive conversation. So don't be afraid to
I
stop the conversation and say, I'm
yeah.
not ready to engage right now in that. I need some time and we can come back tomorrow and we can have this conversation.
I love that. I believe that we're going to break some chains and open some doors of freedom on this for a lot of people that's listening and experiencing these things. That again, I wanted to make a point of creating awareness, and I think not only awareness but a game plan and strategy. So we've talked about some of those strategies today. So when it comes to, because I'm certain this comes up whether, men or women, but we're talking about, women would say more. How have you encouraged or coached folks about navigating, career advancement, negotiation, and all of those things that you want to get to that job, and then I hear a lot of women say, "Well, I took the job and they didn't offer me a raise to do it." And then, someone else came in and they're making more than everybody. What are those conversations that you're having about advancement and negotiation and trade-offs and yeah.
Set
What
your
are,
boundaries. Set your boundaries and stick to them.
yeah,
You know, I know I've said this before, is that there are things we don't have control over. So if there are specific pay scales, I mentioned compensation inequities that are absolutely real in the work environment. I've experienced that. I experienced that in my senior leadership role when I interviewed and was offered, unanimously selected and was offered the position. It was significantly lower than I said that we had negotiated. It was
right.
lower. And I thanked them and I declined.
Yeah.
I knew
Yeah.
exactly what I was doing. Now, I'm not saying to other women out there, excuse me, that you should, if you're given a position, you should decline it. I'm talking about my personal experience.
Right.
1 second. So I did decline. And they asked why. And I said, I'm not going to negotiate this with you. This is not a matter of negotiation. This was set in stone prior to my accepting the interview process.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to honor in good faith what we have already talked about, then I can't do this. And I
Yeah.
won't do this. And I'm not in my 20s anymore. I'm much more competent and confident in my own skin.
Right.
I don't think I would. I know I wouldn't. I wouldn't have done that in my 20s or my 30s. And so with age comes wisdom, comes experience, comes how I want to be seen,
Right.
how I see myself. And so I encourage all leaders, stand up for yourself.
Right.
If you can't be your own voice, who's going to? And
Who's
so
going to?
I'm working with women, with leaders Stand up. Have that conversation. Sitting in silence does no one any good.
No.
Speak your truth. Speak it.
Speak your truth. And I tell people, I said, whether you're a CEO outwardly and you carry that title, you are the CEO of you and yourself and your future.
Absolutely.
So it starts there.
It does. It starts with you.
Yeah. Could you share a success story or achievement of JBR leadership that you are particularly proud of, and how this accomplishment really positively impacted the women that this program serves? And not to mention, again, it is all inclusive, but in particular for this conversation, women.
Yeah. I think about that. The organization I started almost 5 years ago, and I kind of thought, what happened? What success story?
Yeah.
And as I listen to the people that I've coached and the training programs that I've been in, I hear this word life changing. I
Yeah.
can't believe I was this far into my career, and yet this discovery of self has been so profound. This is life changing in how I'm going to move forward. And if I can take us back to something that is in my home that I see every single day, it's predominantly placed. It is a picture that was painted and given to my husband and I the day of our wedding.
Uh-huh.
It was painted by one of my former students, a Latina student who was in my sixth grade class. And this is how it came to be. And I look back and think, this is my inspiration. This is why I want to continue to pay it forward. Is this student first generation going to college? And I didn't know this until recently. Um,
Right.
I have a friend in another town that I lived in, and she was coming to the wedding, and she asked me, "I want to get you something. What can I get you?" And I said, "I'd like something that will remind me of my past, but inspire my future." That's what I said.
Mm.
And she's like, "Really? Could you make it any more difficult than that?" I said, "Will you ask?"
Like,
And
what is that?
I'm
Yeah.
really honest. One of my former students saw a picture of my husband and I on her desk, and she said, "Oh my goodness, that was my sixth grade teacher. I love her. I went to college because I was in her class, and
Oh
she
my
made me
gosh.
believe that I could." And so she says, "I'm an artist now, and I would love to do something for her." And my friend said, "Oh my goodness, this is going to resemble her past and inspire her for her future." The day of my husband and I getting married, my friend gave this to me, and there was a note on the back, and it's still there. It hangs predominantly in my home with a note on the back, and it said, "I believe in myself because you believed in me." And,
Oh my gosh.
there is no greater inspiration than to hear some of those words and some of those thoughts and see another woman
Yeah.
in another culture
Yeah.
make something of themselves and
Right.
follow the path because somebody believed in them along the way. That's what JBR stands for.
I believe that wholeheartedly. It is about investing and paying it forward. So, what a beautiful story. And I know one that you'll always cherish, but I think our listeners will be thinking about that too. And it is. I think it's a great reflection point for the listeners to think about, who's been that person for you in your life, and then how can you be that for someone else that, may not even know that they need that kind of help or support, but that you're able to do that. And that's by validating and providing that positive reinforcement. So, Rose, when you think about, being a leader and an advocate for empowerment, what advice would you give to women who are striving to break through the barriers and advance in their careers? I mean, you've given some great ones along the way, but, I will tell you, one thought is that for those that are in the thick of it right now,
Mhm.
what kind of advice would you give to them? One or two things that they might want to think about.
Show up as yourself, of course, is what I said. Be prepared. Just really be prepared. My father used to say that to me all the time. You got to be prepared. I mean, I could think about this in my sleep. Be prepared for what I didn't know, but just be prepared. So there are going to be some things that are going to go your way and some things that are not. And it's hard to be prepared for everything. But if you're prepared, that means when things don't go your way, you have a support system to lean on, to draw on, to help you through. The other thing that I really want to mention is that there are going to be some defining moments for you, and honor them. Honor those defining moments. One of the defining moments of my life is around mental health. Everyone has mental health, and the state of well-being impacts all of us in a lot of different ways. So for your listeners, for your viewers, I don't want you to think that you're seeing a woman here that's had this path to success. There have been some significant challenges that I have had to work through and overcome. And so when you think about mental health, we all experience different well-being issues and possibly some a mental health disorder in some way, and how we choose to address it. Many of us have coping strategies because we're stressed or because there are some significant issues. We cope in healthy ways and in unhealthy ways. Mine was an eating disorder that stemmed from a lifetime of being perfect, trying to be perfect, restrictive behaviors that dealt with anxiety. And I coped in ways that at sometimes were not healthy. And to have a group of women come around and support me was a defining moment in my life. And I decided at that point that I was going to be a defining moment in somebody else's life. And so I encourage you listening, I encourage you, regardless of gender, that there is somebody out there that's close to you that may be struggling. Notice, pay attention, listen, hear what maybe they don't even want you to hear. That is so, so important in our day and age. It's incredibly important. Change is happening rapidly. We can't keep up with it. Things are evolving. There's so much competition out there. There's hurt. There's not as much support as there should be. Listen, find out what's not being said, pay attention, be prepared, validate, encourage, have that conversation, allow people to show up as themselves, and really find a place or a person that they can start to heal with.
Rose, you have, really made my heart smile with this conversation. And hopefully our listeners can get a visual of that. This, picture this in your head of not only being transparent, but showing both the vulnerability that goes along with this path, but also the strength that you can arrive at. And oftentimes, and I'll say even in your case, it came by way of pouring into other people, and you are still inspired, and that is what you what's led you to not only what I call your professional career, but then even what you've personalized and now by creating JBR Leadership to do. And I think that's, when we think, when we're going through it, you can't see this far. And if we had the crystal ball, my goodness, wouldn't it be amazing? You're like, okay, it's worth it, but you can't. And that's why it's so important that we have not only those that are in our corner, but seek those opportunities out. If they're not there in front of you, seek some out, because I promise you, there are people just like Rose, just like myself, that's willing to invest in you. So Rose, thank you for sharing that. And we have one other question, and that is really kind of looking ahead. What are your aspirations for the future of JBR Leadership? And then, you know what, let's make it two. Kind of what's the legacy? What do you want your legacy to be around this? So what do you see for the future of JBR? And then what would you like that legacy to be?
I think if you've listened to this long, you could probably pretty much predict what I'm going to say in terms of my legacy. And people say it, and I don't think they understand exactly what they mean by it. But I do. I want to make a difference. I was put here to make a difference, and that's what I want to do. And if it's helping women, if it's helping children, if it's helping new and emerging leaders, experienced leaders, CEOs, whoever comes in my path, I want to be a force of positivity, realistic positivity, but I want to be a force for positivity, for inspiration. When someone says, working with you has changed my life,
Yeah.
that's payday. You don't need to send me in the fee for consulting or anything. That's pretty much, that covers it, because they're going to go out and they're going to pay it forward. Have you ever been in a Starbucks line or a coffee line or a human being line, wherever you get your coffee or
Yeah.
wherever you get your Frappuccino or whatever it is you get, and you get up to the window and someone says, the person in front of you has paid for that's pay it forward.
It's
You know,
paying for it.
somebody has done that. That's the legacy that I would like to leave, is that I've paid it forward
Oh my
and that
goodness.
I was a part of something. You know, some of the things that I do want to share
Sure.
is that we're in a rapidly changing environment. And I don't believe that many people understand what change actually is, this cycle of change. And so when I work with my clients, go out and I train or I coach, I make sure that people understand that when the status quo changes, disruption occurs.
Yeah.
And so if you're in a leadership position or you aspire to be in a leadership position or something is happening within your role and the status quo changes, there will be disruption. And people either withdraw
Yeah.
or they push back. My recommendation is try to find a way to dance with people. Find a way to sway to the music and dance with people. And you do that by showing up through conversations, collaborations, adaptations, whatever it is, because people decide for themselves when change happens. They decide when the change has to become your own. And so when I say, yes, I see myself in this change, then I move over into these strategies that help me adopt it. And I
Yes.
try and I fail and I skin my knee and I get back up. I put a Band-Aid on, I figure out a new path until the new way becomes the way that I feel comfortable in. And this happens all the time,
All the
multiple
time.
times. So if you're a woman and you're getting back into the workforce, status quo has changed. You're going to be disruptive. If
Yeah.
you're a married woman and you may be going through divorce or separation, status quo has changed. There's going to be issues. If we understand this, we may get to dance quicker
Yes.
and work through it and figure out how to find support so we can begin then to deal with this new process, because we don't want to stay in failure and we don't want to go back to status quo. We want to find new innovative ways. So that would be my piece of encouragement
I
along the way
love that.
of your situation.
I love that, because what you've just shared, again, without saying it, is that your experience and where you are, it
Mhm.
really is going to dictate kind of what and how you process these things like change and like where you're meeting life on this career journey. So be okay with that. But there's also some helpful tips that we're hoping that will accelerate that dance movement. Because here's the great thing about life's lessons. We don't want you to have to repeat any unnecessarily. If you can learn from someone else, learn from our conversations, then that's exactly what we want you to do. And Rose, you have been awe-inspiring,
Thank you.
uplifting. I felt like I learned so much. I felt like I had my own private session. I love it that I got to share with all my listener friends. So thank you for the conversation. Know again that just like with Workforce Insights, we invite you back often to the Say More podcast, listeners. Again, just such a powerful conversation. Say More listeners, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your continued commitment to self-growth and just really focusing in on the journey and how we can do this thing together. You are never alone with Say More. So please remember to subscribe. Please do like us, and most of all, share it with your friends. Until the next time, bye-bye.